welcome back to Greg's Maker Corner. In this video I'm going to start off with the LDO Box Turtle build. And if you'd like to know more about how I'm sourcing my parts and printing them, check out my original planning and unboxing video, which you can find in the playlist. And as we go along in this video series, I'm going to also be giving some pointers and tips. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment and I'll try my best to respond. And once again, you can see the LDO automatic filament changer kit is here. Be sure to check that out in the previous video if you want to see more. I've got my printed parts and I have used a PLA CF from Polymaker, blue from i3D Max, and I've got some additional parts that are kind of my main color here, which is a smoked PLA from Atomic Filament. And hot off the build plate are these helper tools. So be sure to print these tools out. There may even be a few more by the time you do your build, but these are all intended to make the build a little bit easier. You are going to need to use heat inserts for this build, and I recommend using either this LDO tool or this is one I got on Amazon. These tools fit onto your soldering iron and then allow you to heat the soldering iron to a temperature. I usually use about 190°C and then slowly insert them in, and I'll show that technique here shortly. You're also going to use some Allen keys or metric drivers like I've got here. I've had these ones so long that the logos have worn off, but they've done really well. These are Bondhus brand, and these are the Weha drivers that I use. These can also be found on Amazon, and I'll put the links in the description. First up, you're going to need this part, and this is called the rear skirt center hub. And we're also going to need a heat insert from our kit. If you are using the LDO kit, I'm going to be pulling from this main kit bag. And for step one, I'm just going to turn the part over. And you may notice like some little artifacts on my prints. These are just from the build plate because I did print it on the smooth BEI sheet. But these shouldn't matter when we get everything assembled. Before I do this first heat insert, I just want to point out that these do go in a certain way. There's a little tiny lip right here. So there's kind of a flush side here and a lip. So you want the lip side to go in. And then you're just going to set it in there like that. And then we're going to get our 190°C iron with this heat insert tip on it. And I'm just going to come down and slightly push on it until it sets in. And just gently push. And once you get it in, just pull it out. You want it to be flush with the top of the part. You also want it to be as straight up and down as you can get it. I like to test it with a long screw. And there's a little bit of wiggle room in there, so they don't have to be perfect, but I think that's pretty good. Something else I'll point out, if when you insert this in, you see bubbling around the edges, that means your soldering iron's too hot. You shouldn't be cooking your filament when you insert it. For this tray, you're just going to need 3 inserts, and I've got them positioned. Make sure you're in the middle here, and then this one in the upper right. And you're just going to press down and make them nice and flush like we did in the previous step. Just make sure they're nice and flush. Okay, those look pretty good. That's what it should look like. Again, make sure they're nice and flush. You can check that just by looking from the side. If you need to put one a little deeper, just go back and do that. And now that we've got that one in, we've got to repeat for the next 3. And at this point, you should have something like this. I'm also going to notice at this step, this is a little confusing. You may have this part printed already if you did the no hardware option, and then you can just skip to the step 5. If you did not print the no hardware option, you're going to have to insert a few more heat inserts and a bar and attach that. And you're going to need that side. There's also a piece here. The other thing I'll point out is that this is the no hardware option, and there are still supports on this piece, so I'm going to go ahead and remove those. When you're removing these supports, they should just break off, so you're just going to gently do that. You may have to clean it up a little bit along this edge. Same deal with these, and the key is be gentle. Alright, there we go. Depending on how well tuned your printer is, you may not have much luck printing these, because it does require a built-in support, and there's a little bit of a layer right here where it may or may not interface well. So I've seen problems in the Discord with that people are having. Mine went pretty well. I didn't really have any problems. There is maybe a little bit of loose filament that I'm going to have to clean up, but that's pretty easy to do. Now I've got this A-Hub D2W HW switch, and one of the things you want to do is make sure that the filament path, your filament's going to be passing through here, make sure that it's clear. Just take a tool like this, or a drill bit even, and just stick it in there and rub it around. And after that, you should just be able to run a piece of filament And double check that you can do that through each of these holes, which I can. It's going in pretty easy, as you can see here. So no problem there. So I think I'm good. So the LDO kit does include a drill bit. Just going around and kind of snug it by hand. Don't use your actual drill to do this because you'll damage it. Next up, you're going to need to find your cables kit, and we're going to get out the 1X D2HWC21H cable hub. Make sure you get the one that's labeled hub. And you should see it. Hopefully you can see that in the video, but it says hub on it. And these are all slightly different lengths, so it doesn't matter which cables you use. And if you're doing this by hand, just make sure you have soldered these two connections like this. And for this step, you're going to need your 3D printed part, your hub, D2HW.STL. You're going to need your hub labeled wire. You'll need a socket head M3x10, and you'll need the MR63ZZ bearing. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this bearing and insert it into the 3D printed part. And once you insert it in there, it's going to kind of fall through, and it should look like that. Now we're going to take this piece and set it right on top. It should go right in there. We're simply going to take our M310 and screw it in from the side. If you want to test how this works and just make sure everything's good, just hold it there and you should hear a little bit of a click. And that's when the filament is engaging with the bearing. And that's how it detects that there's filament in there. Just make sure everything's sitting flush. And you definitely do not want to over tighten this. So once you get a little bit of resistance, just stop. You don't want to over tighten this, and it's not going to go anywhere. So again, if you want to check it, just put your filament in there. I would go ahead and check each hole. Make sure you get smooth movement, because if you don't, you need to clean it out a little bit more. And for this step, we're going to need this step 1 hub tool, and then we're going to put that on there like that. And then we also need one of these ECA S04 Bowden couplers. And before you insert that, be sure you take off this little rubber bumper piece, and it should look like that. Okay, there's different options for getting this in, from just trying to press it on a table to gently tapping it with a hammer. And these are not meant to come out once they go in, so I'm going to try the table option, but I don't think it's all the way in yet. If I can pull it out, it didn't go in far enough. You can see how deep this is. It's almost going to be flush with this lip on the outside. So I'm going to go ahead and just try a little bit more with the table. It's going, but I do think I'm going to try some gentle persuasion. So we're going to use this mallet here and hopefully not crack the part. That would be the goal. You can see I got that pretty much flush. I did not damage the part. So if you have a hammer like this, probably use something soft if you can. This is my leather mallet. And if you thought that was it, you were wrong. You actually need to do this again for these 4 pieces here. And there's also a helper tool called step 2, hub step 2. We're just going to do the same process, and the goal is to get all 4 of them in. Once again, remove these rubber bumpers. And I've gone ahead and taped this tool on, so it makes it a little bit easier for me to apply gentle force. There we go. So that is how you want it to look. We're just going to try and repeat that process for each one of these. And here we are with everything completed. So you should have everything flush and up against the piece. These all should be able to pop in and out. And hopefully you've got no cracks or damage to your part. And if you're looking like that, you're good to go. Next up, we're going to use this right rear skirt piece, and you're going to need to remove these built-in supports. I'm going to use this little palette knife that I use for getting parts off. There we go. And in order to do this next step, you're going to need your fan as well as 4 of these M316s. Let's go ahead and remove this. All right, here's Greg from the future. This is actually how the fan should be mounted, with the sticker on the same side as the hub here. And when you're inserting these in, make sure you just snug them up and just don't over tighten them. And you may need to back out this screw a little bit on the one you just did, So don't snug that down completely, just so you can get the other screws in. And then we'll tighten them all down kind of towards the end of this. Next up, we're going to take these 4 corner pieces here. We need to remove these supports from each one. And I was just able to use my Allen key here to remove these. Kind of stick it in there and bust it out. There we go. Now we're going to be attaching those to these extrusions, and make sure you get the 360 millimeter ones out, which there's only 4 of them, and they're the long ones, but you can always double check too. And we've got 360. And I've got the M516s, and I've got the extrusions here ready to go. You're only going to need 2 of these for now. Make sure you pay attention to the layout of the parts as you do this next step. This flat piece is going to be on the top here, and we're going to just lay it on the table flat like that. And next up, I'm just going to go ahead and insert the M516, and you're going to just kind of keep them loose. Don't put them real tight yet. So with the LDO kit, these should be pre-drilled and tapped. Okay. For this next step, we're going to need to take this piece with the fan in it. You're going to need the right rear skirt. You're going to need the center hub, and you're also going to need the left rear skirt. And make sure these should be the same size. There's other pieces that look like this, so just pay attention to the parts that you're going to use here. So I'm going to go ahead and insert that in. It shouldn't be a tight fit. That should fit into that corner piece. Next up, use the center piece. And then finally the outside left piece. It should go in like that. And now we're just going to repeat the M516s in here with the corner piece. So I'll go ahead and close that off. And make sure this top piece is flat, just like in the previous step. Now you should have something that looks like this. Don't completely tighten it just yet. But everything's staying together. Now that we've got this piece together, let's go ahead and fully tighten it. Snug it down on all 4 corners. Make sure that you're keeping this nice and flat against your workspace. And next up, I'm just going to dry fit this piece, and we're going to bolt it here. It should fit right into that without any issue. And then you're going to want to use a M310 to secure that. Okay, I got my M310 here. Make sure you got a socket head. You're going to need the remaining 2 360 millimeter 2020 extrusions. You're also going to need these printed corners, and you'll need your M516s. When you put these on, just pay attention to the orientation, and you're not going to want to tighten them completely. Just get them in there, snug them up a little bit, and then loosen them. And you're going to need your remaining front skirts here. So just make sure you slide these in where this piece is going to insert into the bracket. And then this piece will be the opposite way. And then we're just going to cap it off, remember, with this piece on the top. And I've just rotated around to make it easier for me. Once everything looks nice and flush, go ahead and just tighten everything down. Okay, now you're going to need your remaining 4 extrusions, the smaller ones. And these are going to be secured in the corners like this, all 4. Make sure you have that correct orientation. And I'm going to give you a tip when you're doing this. I would recommend doing them like this, where you're able to keep them nice and squared up. And just repeat that for all 4. When I get to the top, I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing. Now we're going to use these side skirts, and these should be oriented where they go into the extrusion, and this is on the outside. And of course, watch your wire. And they should be able to slide into that printed part pretty well, and that's why you don't want to go too tight, because you're going to need some adjustment. So if you did tighten things up a little bit, Just loosen those just a hair. And then there should be a second piece. There we go. And then just rinse and repeat on this side. And that completes that step. And next up, we're going to put all 4 trays in. And these should fit into the back extrusion. Just like that. So go ahead and fill these in. And this is what it looks like after you get all the trays in. And it's a pretty good fit, pretty tight fit. Okay, I've got it standing up now vertically, and I'm going to secure the front panel. You do have to make sure these all fit into the extrusions, including the side pieces. So it may be a little fiddly. We're going to keep it nice and loose, but we don't want it going anywhere. So I want to hold it in place enough that it isn't walking around on me while I try to adjust this. Now, I should be able to maneuver these in. Yep. And those went in real nice and easy. So now we're going to work on getting this lined up and inserted. Here we go. Okay, that's in. I'm going to go ahead and sink this corner. And now I'll do this top part here. All right, now that's all in. And I think what I want to do is just kind of square everything up. So raised corners should be here as you're looking at the infill side. As you're looking at the tray side, you should have flat corners. So this is a good place to double check everything. Make sure all your trays are inserted and looking good, looking like they should. To square this up, I'm going to make sure that I'm on a flat surface, and I'm going to work from the bottom. And I'm really just going to focus on this bottom piece. And to square this up, I'm just going to loosen. I'm going to hold the corners, and then I'm going to push down from the top and tighten up. I'm just going to repeat that for these bottom 2 corners, and then I'll rotate and do the other side. All right, I'm going to flip it around and do this side. Nice and tight. Nice and tight, and then you're pretty good. You're in pretty good shape as long as you don't have any bounce in these corners. So I think I'm happy with that. And that completes the first section.